today's video, we are finishing our mini-series all about openings. We are going to be looking today at how to create a very simple open zip opening to our front bodice. You're going to need your standard pattern drafting tools as usual, and they're listed next to me here. In the demo, I'm going to be using my own body block, which will look different to yours and that's totally normal. So go and grab your block, create a copy of it, and let's get straight on into it. We've got our front bodice standard block in front of us, and then to do the zip opening I've also got a zip. This zip is an open-ended zip, which means that it pulls apart just like this. I've chosen a zip that is quite wide across the teeth. It's got quite a wide bit across the teeth there. So if I want to have a zip opening that still keeps everything really nice and fitted across my front, I will want to take into account when pattern drafting the width of the teeth, because effectively they're going to be underneath here and opening up like that. So effectively we're adding in that extra width of the zip. Grab a tape measure and just measure the width of your teeth. My zip teeth are 6mm wide. When we open up our zip, only 1/2 of it is going to be attached to 1/2 of our front bodice, and obviously the other half will be attached to the other half of our bodice. So what we actually want to do is to remove only half the width of the zip teeth in total from our front bodice. So for me, my width was 6mm, so I'm going to remove 3mm from the centre front of my bodice. Using a nice sharp pencil, mark those points across the front bodice and then draw a line 3mm away from the centre front. Remove that volume by cutting it out. The next thing I want to do is to draw in a facing so that I've got the zip encased in between two pieces of fabric when I sew it together. So what I need to do before I can do the facing is just temporarily move this dart just to remove that volume and close up the shoulder. Find the centre point of your waist dart, draw a line from that point all the way up to the apex. Cut along that new line. Next, just cut down one side of the bust dart at the top of the shoulder. Next, I just want you to pivot your block just by closing up that top dart. As this is just a temporary move, just pop some masking tape down there. Brilliant. Now we like to have a facing that is about 5cm wide, so mark that point 5cm away from the neck point along the shoulder. Likewise, down at the centre front, mark a point that is 5cm away from the centre front. Draw in your facing with a nice curved line. Our back bodice is very simple. It requires no alterations. We just need to draw in our facing line. So our facing line at the front here was 5cm. So we're just going to tie that in now and draw a point that is 5cm away from the neck point and 5cm along the centre back as well. Fantastic. Okay, so we have now drafted out the pattern piece. Let's add our seam allowances next. We're going to start off by drawing our front facing. Add your seam allowance to the centre front. Drawing the waistline. Add your 1.5cm seam allowance around the neckline. Add your seam allowance to your shoulder seam. Grain line. Zip bodice front facing, cut 2. Now the next thing we need to do is just to open up this dart here again. Close up that waist dart so that we've got our original block style in front of us. Let's do the front bodice next. The centre front needs a seam allowance. Draw in a seam allowance around the neckline so that it ties in with the front facing. Add your seam allowance to your shoulder seam. Don't forget to draw in your dart. Draw in the arm side. Draw in the side seam. And there's no seam allowance to the waist simply because we're not adding it onto anything else. Draw in the waist dart. And you may also just want to do a little notch for the facing line. Annotate your pattern piece next with the grain line following the centre front. Zip bodice, front bodice, cut 2. Great, let's move on to our back bodice. Now our back is going to be placed on the fold, so no seam allowance is required, and that's because the opening is at the front bodice. Next, draw in your neckline, adding a seam allowance. Draw in your shoulder seam along with your dart. Again, the arm side is with no seam allowance. Then draw in your side seam and your waist. Add the dart to the waist as well for extra shaping. Annotate your pattern piece to make sure that you say that the centre back is to be placed on the fold. It sort of goes without saying that then the grain line also follows the fold line, but it's always helpful just to mark that on your pattern piece just for clarity. Zip bodice, back bodice, cut 1 on fold. Let's just add our seam allowances to our back facing pattern piece now. They're really similar to the back piece. With the back facing pattern piece, we're going to place it on the fold, adding a seam allowance to our neck and our shoulder. We're going to cut one of those pattern pieces on the fold. Now that we've added our seam allowances, we're just going to cut out our pattern piece using calico, and don't forget to transfer all of your line markings, most of which are actually just your darts. To start off with, we're going to pin and sew all of our darts across the back and the front pattern pieces. If you're not sure how to do this, refer to video 22. Once you've sewn your darts, just press all those darts towards the side seam for the front and also for the back. Press them towards the side. With right sides together, we're going to lay the front pieces over the back, and then we're just going to pin the shoulder seams together. Next, we'll sew those seams together. Take that away to the ironing board and just press those seams open. Let's take our front and back facing pattern pieces next. Okay, lovely. So we've got our facing pieces with the right side facing up. We're going to flip over the back facing onto the front facing, and we're just going to pin that in place at the shoulder seam. Pin the shoulder seam for both sides, and then just sew using your standard seam allowance. And let's press those seam allowances open too. Okay, so we have our zip and we're wanting to attach it onto our front bodice. Let's just detach the zip first. This is the way we're wanting it all to be. This is all the right side facing up effectively. So let's take one zip side and just flip it over, and then we're just going to pin it in place, making sure that our zipper teeth are 1.5 centimetres away from the raw edge. Now what you should find is at the top of the zipper teeth, you've got 1.5 centimetres at the top here. Okay, grab the other half of the zip and just repeat that whole process. Okay, so next we're going to want to use a zipper foot to sew the zip to the bodice. You may have one that looks like this or another one that looks like this. Okay, so I've sewn one line of stitches all the way down my zip. Can you see it there in the blue colour here? And what that means is when I turn it out, we've got a really nice, neat finish on that side. Great, so let's do exactly the same for the other side. Lovely. Okay, what we're going to do now is grab our facing piece, and with the right sides together, we're just going to lay the facing over our bodice. Okay, and basically we're going to sandwich our zip in between the facing and the bodice so that we can't see the raw edge of the zip. As you're pinning it, make sure that you just pin the reference points first, which are the shoulder seams obviously, and the hem and the corners of the neckline. So get those in place first and then just pin the rest around. Okay, so we've pinned it all together now, and what we're going to do first is, using our machine with the zipper foot on, we're going to sew down through both of the centre front lines to start off with, making sure that we've sandwiched the zip in between. We're trying to get as close to the zipper teeth as we can. Then, once we've sewn the two centre front lines, we'll then use a standard foot just to go all the way around the neckline. Lovely. Once you've done that, let's put the right sides together, the front over the back, and then we're just going to pin and sew the side seams as our penultimate step. Brilliant, then snip those corners just to create a little bit more space for the corners to be turned out, and then turn the facing to the inside of the garment and press it in place. Amazing, let's go and see what that looks like now. The zip front opening is quite a dramatic look depending on the width and the scale of the zip that you use. Obviously here we've not made any alterations to the block, but you can imagine this applied to loads of different contexts and loads of different shapes of your bodice as well. Quite a simple piece of pattern drafting, but has quite a nice, bold, dramatic look. So thank you for joining me today. I've been Izzy at Minerva, and it's been a privilege to talk you through how to do this little pattern drafting technique. We always love to hear from our maker community, so please do create an account on our website and upload your photos of your pattern drafting journey there, and feel free to comment below the video to join part of the conversation all about pattern drafting. In next week's episode, we are going to start a brand new series all about sleeves. So it's back to the drawing board. We're going to measure our body, measure our arms again, and off we go, starting a brand new series. So I will see you next week.